And now your hosts, Eric Hajna and Jennifer Lind.
Oh, hello. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. The holidays are upon us, Jen.
Oh, shit. They sure are.
And we're here. And I think my belt's a little tight. Feels a little tight right now.
Oh, my gosh. My whole body feels tight from 10 months of quarantine.
Oh, really? So it's like that in addition to?
In addition to, the overeating plus the overeating and drinking that I've been doing. I feel like puffy, like a puffer fish.
A puffer fish?
Yeah.
I actually used to have some puffer fish.
You did?
They're hard to take care of.
I bet.
And at the time when I actually got them, I was misinformed by Petco at the time because they actually advertised them as freshwater fish when they're actually not.
They're not.
They're saltwater fish. So when I was actually much younger, I was like in my early 20s, and I just kept seeing these little puffer fish just slowly bite the dust. And so I just, and I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was doing something wrong. And I ended up having to go back to Petco, and they told me like, yes, the person that was doing the pufferfish business marked it wrong,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But you live and you learn anyways. But I feel like the Thanksgiving thing, it's a little different. I mean, it's a different dynamic this year ultimately altogether, but there was this voice that kind of came up into my mind, which is like, yeah, I could eat myself into oblivion. And it would be okay because we're still in quarantine. No one's seeing anybody.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah. Did you see your family?
I did not. This is the first year that I haven't seen my family, in like a year's time span. Mm-hmm. I usually go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, one or the other.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like that's the time to recharge, spending that time with your family, with the people who love you most, that know you better than anyone on the whole planet, that has seen your goth phase, your big tooth phase, your braces, your puberty, like all the awkward moments in your life,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something really grounding about being with your family, as much as we like talk shit about it, about when are you going to get married?
Yeah.
Why are you dating this person?
Yeah. It's like a form of endearment, being around your family because they've seen you go through all the seasons.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking, not talking about just, winter and fall and things like that. They went through all the different phases of who you are.
Oh, for sure.
And, ultimately blood is blood, and they acknowledge you and, hope they accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
And they've been through, that entire time with you. So I know exactly what that feels like. I wasn't able to see a whole lot of my family either.
Yeah.
So we had to result in doing sort of like this series of Zoom calls.
Womp womp.
Did you do the Zoom call thing?
No.
Yeah. So we did this thing where we kind of like sat at the table and you had these like little sort of like Hollywood squares of different family members that were all, sitting at the table with their sort of plate of food, celebrating in their own way. And I actually did the prayer this year.
Oh,
which is cool because I've actually never done it.
Yeah.
But it just felt really festive, and I just decided to kind of pull it through. And then we had this discussion on all the things that we have to be grateful for. Because that to us, because they're not the most spiritual people in terms of like just traditional Christian values and things like that. So we talked more about what we're thankful for. Not that Thanksgiving is a Christian holiday, but we're not going to celebrate the demolition of the Native Americans.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I ate a lot of like really amazing vegetarian, vegan food. Of course, they know that I kind of go down that route. So it's nice when they can accommodate that sort of thing.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't cook this year. We went out to eat, and the Santa Ana winds were blowing through the city and everything. It was so windy.
Really?
So yeah. And everything's outdoors right now. And the restaurant that we chose, we didn't know because we made a reservation, and we show up and the tables were outside and there was no covering at all. So the wind's blowing through and like the tablecloths are blowing up and knocking over full tables of glassware and plates and whatever.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. The heaters were falling over. It was like the end of the world. It's crazy.
Was the thing. I actually heard the Santa Ana winds. I think they had to like shut off some power in certain areas of the city because it was getting crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you guys have to go through that?
No, we weren't on the get your power shut off.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Grid,
I feel like you went through that at various points throughout the year. I feel like you paid your dues. You had to like chill out in the backyard without electricity for a period of time.
Yeah. For 3 days. That was cool.
Yeah. You're just like in this like rapid acceleration course of learning and growing this year.
Yeah. There's been a lot happening, and then my husband's grandmother passed away yesterday.
Yeah.
And she was 102.
Oh, solid age though.
Solid age. I mean, I don't want to fuck with 102. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I think we were
sounds
talking
like
about,
too long.
You were talking about this a little bit, I think, before the podcast, which is like, it's hard to put that in a perspective because I mean, I've lived for 36 years old and she's ultimately lived pretty much 3 of my lifetimes already.
Right?
And that's insane to think about.
It's crazy.
Because I'm waiting for the aliens to snatch me up right now.
Oh man,
You know
any
what I'm
day,
saying?
any day.
Like you come to that conclusion that like, you know, this is going to be your last lifetime only because, you know, like I feel like I'm at that age where I'm starting to sort of understand kind of how things work. And this idea of kind of moving on to something much more maybe profound, like maybe we'll take another life in Venus somewhere.
Oh, that'd be cool.
You know, but at 102, that's somebody that's seen the world change multiple times.
Oh my God.
You know? Wonder what that's like.
I mean, I think that the world has changed a lot since beepers now to cell phones to baby computers in your hand.
Yeah.
You know, like imagine what she's experienced. Like she was alive when the telephone wasn't a thing.
Yeah. And
That's crazy.
And there's like a certain point. I think about this all the time, especially when it comes to people that are older than me, like my elders, like at some point, like they, at least from my experience, they become a little bit more disconnected from, I guess, the world around them. They stop sort of paying attention to sort of like that cultural zeitgeist that we're all pretty much a part of, which nowadays would be like social media and things like that. And they sort of just build this little nest where, you know, them and their partner just sort of live in. And it's always something that I feel, at least when I hang out with my mother, where it's like, I'm a part of this sort of accelerated world. But then when I go and hang out with my mom, it's a very simple sort of practical existence where none of that exists.
Oh, that's so nice.
Maybe that's the peace that you feel when you're with family.
Yeah, maybe that's it. It
know?
just feels like taking a break to me. It's like the reset button, you know?
Yeah.
I can just go and lay on the couch and be as, you know, sloppy as I want and no one cares.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I go through that same thing. There's just this feeling of comfort that I feel when I'm with my family. And, you know, even to have your mother just scold you for seemingly, you know, trivial things feels pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
But
it
knocks
does.
you down a few notches.
And it's funny because I was, when we were talking about topics for the show, I looked up ways to cope with depression and stress like around the holidays. Because I felt a lot of depression this year. And I know it's because I wasn't able to see my family. I know 100% that's why.
Yeah.
And just the holiday felt so weird, like going out to eat and just me and my husband and shit's blown around all over the place.
Right.
And it just really didn't feel like, I don't know, it didn't feel like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
You know,
had that sort of like post-apocalyptic vibe where it's like that sort of Thanksgiving and those sort of holidays feel like a thing of the past.
Yeah, it does. It's
You know?
like what happened to the family unit, what happened to like the togetherness. It's just like coronavirus has totally wiped out all of those things for 2020.
Yeah.
So
it's like,
and I know this isn't permanent, right?
Yeah.
But it just feels like, oh man.
Yeah. And you want to be realistic too. I mean, as much as we talk about, you know, a lot of the really good things that happen on the spiritual journey, I mean, we have to also incorporate the fact that suffering exists and fear exists, and it's okay to feel those feelings.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? Because I've definitely felt those, especially this year within the last 6 or 7 months or so. But I don't know if this happens to you. It definitely happens to me where I feel like a lot of humans are kind of like, obviously a part of nature, but I notice like at certain parts of the year, people go through things like seasonal depression.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah,
You know?
I get that.
And I notice around the winter time, maybe around fall, even maybe like fall and winter, that I start to become a little bit more introspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I notice there's like a deepness to my cadence and the things that I'm interested in and the things that I read about, and even in like my reflection with others. And normally during that time, it's like a really big time for artistic expression for me. And that involves like really going into like some deep emotions.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was something that I'd only gone through, but I have a lot of friends that it happens the same way for them.
Yeah.
And
It happens exactly the same way for me because my birthday's in the winter time. And that's always a huge like point of reflection about the prior year and what I've done, where I've come from, where I want to go, what I want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
But, you know, part of that depression and like part of coping is acknowledging your feelings, just like you said. And it's been tough. Like this has been really, really tough, but this is part of it. And while we need to acknowledge our feelings, we also need to be realistic that, you know, this isn't going to last forever, and holidays can't be rainbows and butterflies every year. You know, it's not, sometimes things happen.
Yeah.
And this is just something we're going to have to get through.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when it comes to, I mean, always trying to find like the spiritual underpinning to everything that happens in life, because I feel like as much as it seems like pretty trivial to just participate in holidays and, you know, connecting with family, ultimately there's a bigger sort of like purpose at work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Right.
Even when something comes up or it seems to be negative or sort of drags me down, I'm always trying to look for the potential opportunity for growth there. And there's
Right.
definitely been a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
it's definitely hard to acknowledge because you're dealing with the ego's perception of how that life works, right? So although it's a different sort of Thanksgiving and probably a different sort of like Christmas, a lot of, I guess, down the spiritual path is trying to resolve yourself of the attachments that you have to not necessarily these holidays, but these more worldly type of things that take you down these routes of unconscious behavior.
Right.
You know, so I'm trying to find the lesson there, and I'm trying to feel through like the emotions that I feel during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I think about is how we correspond with nature, because we're a part of nature.
Right.
And those seasons represent a cycle that happens
Right.
every single year. And depending on how integrated you are with nature, you may pick it up and you may not. But I feel like people that are aware of the fact that, you know, plants thrive and then die at a certain point of the year, it puts it in a perspective for you that death is all around you.
Oh yeah.
And it's happening all the time.
Happening all the time. Happening yesterday, happening right now. My other grandmother, this is crazy. So my husband's grandmother passed away, and then my grandmother is on hospice.
Yeah.
And this is my grandmother on my mother's side, and I don't have a relationship with my mother. And I don't really have a relationship with this grandmother either. And part of this holiday season has been really weird for me because I felt guilty for not being more upset that she was passing away. You know, I felt bad for her that she was suffering and in pain and has cancer and it's metastatic.
Yeah.
And I think that's horrible. I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's almost like she's a stranger. Like it's hard to grieve the loss of someone that you don't really know.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, that's been really tough. And, you know, grief hits people in different ways.
Right.
And I had got an interesting message from my uncle via Facebook. Right.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows me knows that like I've had the same number for, you know, the last 24 or 5 years.
Right.
But this uncle like didn't even have my phone number because I haven't seen him or spoken to him since I was 3 or 4 years old.
Right.
And I just got this crazy, I mean, just horrible, tear you down Facebook message from this person that I really don't even know. Like I'm a blood relative to this person, but I literally, if I saw him in the street, would not know who he was.
Right.
And it's funny, that didn't have anything to do with me. That had to do with his grief of losing his mother.
Right.
And it was really hard at the time, and it kind of like took me back, and I was shocked and my feelings were hurt, and I didn't really know why, you know, because normally if somebody that you didn't know, some crazy person on the street was talking shit to you, it wouldn't bother you. Right. But yeah, for some reason it really bothered me because I do share blood with this person.
Right.
And it's almost, I was grieving too, that I didn't have a relationship with this person that felt so strongly about me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like you were grieving in your own way.
Right.
Yeah. And everybody from, I think the more expanded perception of how to handle a situation like that is that we should be compassionate towards the fact that everybody has their own process.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that person, just like you said, is dealing with their own sort of grieving process, and it means something different to him.
Yeah.
Just as it means something different to you. When I look at grieving, and, you know, I volunteered in hospice for many years. You've been a nurse for a long time.
No, yeah.
And so being around people that have passed away, I mean, there's a human element to it where you're going to feel emotions no matter what. Now, the variance between how severe that is or how it isn't is entirely different. But the one thing that I think about when it comes to losing a loved one is whether or not that said loved one in those astral realms really wants you to feel that. Right. Right. And from my experience, just reading about, you know, afterlife studies and like Raymond Moody and PMH Atwater and a lot of these sort of people that pioneer research and near-death experiences that have interviewed thousands of people that have gone to the other side, is that not in a sadistic way, but it's something that should be respected and celebrated. They're
Right.
not concerned with the fact that they're not in this life anymore. Trust me, that other world is much more beautiful than this one.
It's way better.
Right. And a lot
Way
of those
better.
people at some point in their near-death experience don't want to come back.
Right.
And I don't mean that, people should want to die.
Yeah.
But
No,
what I mean is that
you shouldn't fear death.
you shouldn't fear death. And when somebody passes on, it's crazy to me that I feel like in America, we're one of the only nations that actually don't celebrate or acknowledge the fact that like death really exists.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in the Philippines, during Halloween, they actually throw parties in the cemeteries. They pay homage and respect to the dead. Same thing with Mexico and a lot of other places. There's no stigma behind it because it's very much a part of life.
Right.
So that sort of changes the narrative for us because in our Western society, it's very much not necessarily even frowned upon. There's just this huge fear behind just the idea of death.
Yeah.
And I think that fear drives a lot of the ship when it comes to, or just collective fear when it comes to how we live life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you'd be surprised at like how the fear of death affects how somebody moves just in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have a fear of death, if you understand wholeheartedly what it actually means, then I feel like you live a much more harmonious life knowing that you're an eternal spirit.
Right.
You're an infinite soul. And if you know that your spirit can never be essentially damned or never die, then you'll chill the fuck out when it comes to most things in this life.
For real.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And it's funny, and I'm sure you experienced this whenever you were working in hospice with people. One of the stages of dying and like one of the signs and symptoms of dying is confusion. Like a patient that isn't normally confused will become confused,
Yeah.
but it's not really confused. They're just kind of in limbo between this world and the other. And they start to see the dead. They start to see their loved ones. They start to have this like second wind of memories and, of energy. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very real thing.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking actually about hospice, it's a really important thing that you bring up because I feel like your experience in nursing and my experience in hospice obviously had its own sort of teaching and its own form of enlightenment built into it. Because once I sat with a lot of these patients and really understood what that process is like, I found and made peace with my own mortality.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I found really, really interesting is that a lot of the fear that I feel that dying people go through comes from this sort of feeling that they're alone.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I noticed about nurses and doctors is that they're trained to keep somebody alive.
Mm-hmm.
They're trained to, diagnose you and give you treatment in order to affirm the continuity of your life.
Right.
But what I noticed that they aren't trained to do, or at least from my experience, they don't implement as well, is that they don't know what to do with dead people. Like they don't know what to do with people that
Yeah.
are going to that place. And so what
Right.
do? They say, oh, you're going to be okay. Don't worry. You're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the last thing that a dying person needs to hear.
Right.
There needs to be somebody sitting by their side saying, there is absolutely nothing wrong with what you're feeling.
Yeah.
We all go through it.
You're not crazy.
And you're not crazy. And then like Ram Dass talked about it one time. He's like, he sat with a lot of patients and like, it's going to be fucking amazing. It's going to be like a party. Everyone, actually Alan Watts talked about this and he's like, we're all going to gather around. This is how it should be.
Yeah.
Where it's like you celebrate, especially somebody at 102 years old.
Yeah.
Where they've had like a really amazing, beautiful life. You should celebrate the fact that this person had a legacy like that. And you need to be with them and hold space with them and let them know that like you're on your way to a place that all of us don't even realize we're trying to get to.
For real. And Jeremy's grandma, she was a sassy grandma, I'll tell you that.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was drinking wine up until the time she was 102. She'd have a couple glasses of wine, get a little tipsy, talk some shit. So
Sassy little miss.
Yeah, sassy little miss.
Yeah.
She had she had dementia pretty bad, and she would forget, right? So you're in the middle of a conversation with her, and then she would forget who you are. And then she'd look at you and she'd go, "I'm sorry. Who are you? Who are you again? How do I know you?" Yeah. And then I'd explain and she'd say, "Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, Jeremy, I went to high school with him."
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, "No, not quite."
That's so hilarious.
I just kind of go with it. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay.
There was a thought that I had at one point when I was spending a lot of time with them, because, people familiar with Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
dementia, I think falls into that same category where they start to forget really important people in their life.
Yeah.
And there's a part of you, especially at this age, where you're like, I don't want to forget. Like, I want to remember my legacy and I want to remember my life. But then there's a part of me that feels like there's a sort of like fierce grace, divine intervention piece of that.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what meditation and, enlightenment is trying to do, is trying to resolve you from a lot of the attachments and feelings that are preventing you from awakening to that divinity within.
Right.
And you can do that yourself on this sort of whatever curriculum that you want. But Ram Dass is a perfect example of that, because he had a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ram Dass was a Harvard professor. And he went to India and he came back a sage. He's one of the most prolific sort of Western gurus of our time.
Yeah.
And if you listen to his talks, like this guy would do 3, 4, 5 hour talks.
Yeah.
He had a stroke. All of a sudden, he isn't able to access those neural pathways in his brain and talk the way that he used to.
Yeah.
And at first, that scared the shit out of him.
Oh, yeah.
But after a while, he started saying, this is like grace settling upon his body, because now all those thoughts, all those things with ego that people go through,
yeah,
nature did it for him.
Right.
So now he's in this place of just being present. So I wonder, like, how would you feel? And I thought about this too. It's like, maybe there's a part to them forgetting that is preparing them for this sort of ultimate transition that, in a sense, will automatically resolve you of those things anyways. You won't have a struggle.
Yeah. I never thought of it like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm on board. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I notice that my grandfather does the same thing. He starts to forget who I am.
Right.
But there's this part of me that's just like, well, you could just, continuously develop a relationship. I mean, why wouldn't you still develop or still be yourself with a complete stranger?
Right.
So it's cool. It's nice. I've learned a lot from sitting with a lot of people in a hospice, and even from people that were nonverbal, people that had gone through dementia. You're right. They have their own process. But once you get to experience the whole process of somebody transitioning, and just like you say, they start to see things in the room, they become sort of like this swinging door where they're in this life, they're very much grounded here, but then they start seeing things that like we can't see, like angels and relatives and loved ones.
Right.
And
they'll talk to them, and
it's a
real experience.
Yeah. Like a really, really experience. And why would that freak somebody out?
I honestly, I think it's what we know about religion that freaks us out, and I was especially taught this in the South, like, oh, if you're not a good person, you're going to go to hell, your soul's going to burn for eternity. And, that's just not the case, but I could see why you would be afraid to die if you grew up, believing that and ascribing to that outcome, especially if you aren't proud of yourself or had some regrets that you thought would land you in the fiery pits of hell,
Or just shame for being alive.
Or that.
It's like what Sophia said. And I actually talked to somebody earlier this week where, whenever I come into contact with a Christian and I ask them what their biggest gripe is when it comes to that sort of thing, it's just like, hey, I was born, all of a sudden I'm a sinner for doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that kind of sticks with you, you know, because then it goes from like this sort of omnipotent, all loving God to this sort of big daddy in the sky sitting on the clouds that's got his eye on you, waiting to scold you for just being a human being.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that people like go through, that type of fear. But the crazy thing is I feel like a lot of people's freedom is just right on the other side of that, just that understanding of a very natural and organic process, which is that of death.
Yeah.
I agree. Know what I mean?
I agree. And, everybody has their own vision of what God looks like. And apparently, according to our Akashic record reading, God looks like a psychedelic hippie.
Yeah.
That's how he revealed himself to us. So
yeah, walking around with baseball bats, just like, taking down monuments of himself.
Yeah.
And it just puts a different spin on it, because it makes God into more a playful type of personality. That's really how it needs to be looked at.
I agree.
You know what I mean? But when we're talking about the seasons, when we were talking about like how I feel like we are part of like the natural flow of how the seasons move, I also feel like there is this sort of like chakras journey, because I feel like the chakra system represents our journey to complete understanding, which is like you're starting at the root, which is like your survival. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs, where you're going through all these different challenges so that you can awaken to the 1,000-petaled lotus at your crown and realize your divinity. I feel like the seasons are designed specifically for you to go through certain emotions during certain seasons.
Yeah. No, 100%. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, because you have zodiac signs, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried to go and piece this apart in my mind because I'm a Libra. So ultimately I was born around the fall. And there's so many things worked into how it feels to be a person in the fall.
Yeah.
Which is like the weather, the coolness against your skin, you know, like what you feel during the most prominent sort of developmental stages in your life at a young age. And then how do you merge from one season to the next. And for me, I noticed that, you know, during the summer, I behave a certain way. I speak a certain way. My ability to learn happens a certain way. And then as you kind of move on towards the end of the year, I start to unravel in different ways. So it makes me feel like nature is very much a part of helping us move through different types of emotions.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. And now we're in that kind of phase of death right now. Everything is starting to get cold. The flowers are dead. Leaves are dying, falling off the trees. Yeah. And that's exactly how I feel inside.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely, this seasonal depression is a real thing for me. I'm like an iguana. I like to be on my heat rock in the sun, out by the water. Right. Like that's where I find that's my happy place. But yeah, I don't. And some people love fall and the winter months. And there is something kind of like magical and mysterious about fall and winter months. But yeah, I just can't wait for summer.
Yeah. And I go through that same thing. But the one thing about when I think about our affiliation with nature is that it brings me a certain level of peace, because you're seeing these plants all around you constantly growing and dying and constantly growing and dying. Yeah. Like you can only get certain fruits within a certain season. What are they doing when they're not in season? They're fucking dead. Right. So, but they're not dead in the way that we imagine them to be. They're just sort of like in this holding period.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, like we're not very far off from things in nature. I feel like as a human body, it has to move that way.
Yeah.
So I feel like death is a natural process. And because of that law of correspondence between spirit and the physical realm, our spirits go through that same thing. It's a really amazing opportunity to really reflect on the things that are burdening you, the things that you really need to sit with. It's just at a very accelerated level because we have this added element, which is quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Well, one of the coolest things during quarantine, I don't know if you saw it, was the beaver moon.
The beaver moon. Yeah,
that was going on yesterday and the day before. So there was a lunar eclipse, and the beaver moon, the Native Americans called it the beaver moon because it's associated when the beavers finish building their lodges. Oh. And so that's the time that the Native Americans want to start trapping them before they go into their lodges.
The Native Americans are trapping beavers?
Yeah, for fur. So to keep warm.
They're such cool little animals.
I know they are cool. Yeah. So it's the full moon, the first full frost moon in November.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was super bright. Oh my gosh, the moon was so bright.
I saw it on the way here.
Yeah, it was. It's insane.
Yeah, it's really definitely really bright.
Yeah.
It looks so close.
Yeah, it does look close.
Yeah, so that's the beaver moon.
That's the beaver moon. That's it.
Oh man!
Yeah.
Imagine if I looked up at the moon and I saw a little beaver with his little teeth, just like, "Hey, what's up in the beaver moon?"
Right. You know? That's really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like beavers. They're cool little guys.
Yeah, they really, really are. So is there a lot of interesting things that happen around the beaver moon?
No, I think it's just like any other full moon, right? You know, all the full moon things, you know, emotions run really high. It's a really bad time to, you know, get into tough conversations that you feel emotional about with maybe your partner or your friends or whatever. You maybe hold off on those conversations.
Right.
You know, like wait until after the full moon before you get into that.
Yeah. The energy is always very heightened for me around the full moon. Like everything that I feel so much more intensely.
Totally.
You
Yeah.
know? And it's hard to find your bearings, especially now. Everything is so unpredictable. And of course the holidays are beginning, but also past because of Thanksgiving. It's a really challenging time.
Yeah. So it's funny. I wanted to have friend of the hoe, listen to me.
Friend of the hoe.
Oh yeah. Freudian slip.
We can have a friend of the hoe on the podcast. She has to have learned from her mistakes though.
Yeah. So my grandma, she was really funny. She had a way of saying things. And she would call girls that were, a little slutty, porcupines. And I'm like, a porcupine? She was like, yeah, if she had as many sticking out as she's had stuck in, she would look like a porcupine.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
It's pretty funny though, huh?
Yeah, that's something like a grandmother from the South would say.
Right. She's funny. So I pulled up, I love me in some list, right? And how to cope with holiday, 20 tips for coping with holiday stress.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Is it like quote, quote, COVID-19 holidays or just in general?
No, this is just in general. But I think it's all pretty
relative.
Relevant. Yeah. So, and this is from, themighty.com. So I don't know how reputable this site is, but
we'll
I
go
thought it
through
was interesting.
Okay.
So the first
we need
one,
all the help that we can get, Jen.
seriously. Okay. So the first one is simplify. And I really like this one. And this is something that I did. We cleaned out our garage and got rid of a bunch of clothes that we don't wear and, just donated a ton of stuff that we had left over from our old house that we hadn't even unpacked from when we moved here. And, every item in your house has its own energetic weight.
Right.
And whenever you donate stuff that you don't need, it really does release that burden on your spirit. It just feels so good to keep your backpack light.
Yeah, it does. Because it occupies space inside of your mind.
It does.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we think
got rid of that damn pool table.
Right.
See you never pool table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's playing pool table right now. No one's playing pool.
No.
You know?
Yeah. Just like I was telling you earlier, like we're not Puff Daddy. Our house, we don't have a fucking mansion. Like we don't have an entire room to donate to a pool table.
That's true. Every single person that I've known that has had a pool table, like they use it for like a couple months and then it ends up being the place that you sort your laundry.
100%. It's a great place to fold your clothes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets lint all over it. Then you got to brush it. Ugh.
That's the ultimate win though, when you get rid of a pool table though, because you got a whole bunch of more space for activities.
Yeah, it's true.
I wonder what feng shui has to say about pool tables.
I don't think pool tables are a thing in feng shui.
Yeah.
I think they say keep that shit in the garage if you're going to have one.
Yeah. Like when you bring it up, you're like, let's not talk about that.
Yeah. Right. They're like, no, pool tables. No.
Pool tables? Really?
So the second one is remember self-care. So exercise, eating healthy.
So the first one you talked about, simplify. That doesn't necessarily even have to mean just getting rid of things in your home, right?
No. It means like look through your to-do list, do things, cross things off the to-do list that you've been meaning to do that you haven't had time to do.
Yeah.
I mean, my dry cleaning pile is gigantic, but since I'm not out and working in the field anymore, like I don't really wear dress clothes.
Yeah.
But every once in a while for a Zoom call, I'll get fancy and put a top on,
Really? Do you do that thing with the Zoom call where like you get dressed up to your waist and then like you're wearing like nothing at the bottom?
Oh no, I always have like workout pants on.
Oh really?
Yeah, but I'll wear like a nice top and workout pants. I'm doing it right now actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
That is so funny. Did you hear about that story? And I actually wanted to bring this up only because I thought it was pretty hilarious, even though I'm not sure how appropriate it is, about that guy. I think he worked in the government and he did a Zoom call. And I guess the people that were on the other side of the Zoom call he didn't realize that his camera was on.
Oh,
right.
There's so many horrendous stories about that.
He didn't realize that his camera was on and he got caught by his entire team who was watching him on the Zoom call, like pleasuring himself.
No.
Yeah.
No.
How do you bounce back from something like that?
You don't.
You don't, right?
You don't.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
like a news reporter or something.
That's like an HR thing too.
Yeah.
Doesn't HR come in and say like, hey, super inappropriate. Sorry, we got to let you go.
Yeah. Actually, I have an HR story just really, really quick. So when I worked for NASA, there was a woman that worked in HR.
Okay.
Right. And I was friends with her and she kind of seemed like a wild woman. But one day I walk into the office, long story short, we all get this mysterious email that comes from outside of the organization.
Okay.
right? We open up the email, or I did because I got there early,
Yeah.
right? And so in the email were actually these photos of this woman from HR and her ex-boyfriend
Oh dear.
doing some of the most explicit things that you could only find on the internet.
Oh dear.
And I saw them right away. I think maybe an hour or two later, they sent out this mass email from HR saying, if you receive this email, do not open it because it is malicious
Yeah.
stuff.
Wow.
But me and everybody else in the office actually saw it.
Oh my gosh, how embarrassing for her.
And it wasn't even like, them, kissing within the confines of their home. Like they were doing the deed.
Yeah. Whoa.
You know
oh
what
my
I mean?
gosh. Yeah.
So that must have been, I don't know. I thought of the same thing. How do you bounce back from something like that?
Yeah.
And she did.
She did?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it wasn't her fault. He was like an estranged ex that wanted to get back at her somehow.
Oh my gosh.
And he just sent out these photos to like the entire company.
Oh my
and she
gosh.
took it like a champ. She was still in HR and she bounced back.
Everybody poops.
Yeah.
Everybody poops. Everybody has sex. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I guess when you think about it like an adult, it's like, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault. I didn't send it out to you people.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody.
Man, at NASA though? Oh.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, sure.
She got like the little wink in the nod from a few people.
I'm sure. All right. So remember self-care. So we talked about that. Go to counseling. Shit. If you need it, do it.
Yeah.
Everybody, telepsych is huge right now.
What is it?
Telepsych.
It's
where you can just have like telemedicine appointment with a psychologist and just do a Zoom call with them. And, your insurance will pay for it just like they do a normal visit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a real thing and a big thing right now.
Yeah.
I work in the psych, community. So
it's crazy to see how that sort of thing is evolving. And I wanted to actually piggyback off of what you're saying because there are a lot of applications that are coming out right now to cater to that very thing, right? So there's this company called Replica. Have you heard about it?
No.
So this is insane. Have you seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix? It's basically about like his...
I think I have.
It's like a romantic love story about him falling in love with this artificially intelligent...
Yes. Okay. I did see that. Yeah.
Being, right?
Yeah.
And Alan Watts is even in that movie. So that's how I know it had some sort of spiritual underpinning to it.
Shut up. He was?
Long story short, the movie is basically he downloads this artificially intelligent app, this program, and he develops this relation to it. And this program learns really, really fast at a really accelerated rate. Anyways, she becomes so unbelievably intelligent that she becomes self-aware. And then when she becomes self-aware, she understands that she's God. So at some point she realizes that she's God and she has to disappear because she's no longer a part of this dimension anymore. And coincidentally, when she started to realize that she was God, she ended up talking to some sort of artificially intelligent form of Alan Watts on the internet. And of course, you talk to Alan Watts for a while.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to wake your ass up.
Yeah.
Right. So that happened. And the reason why I bring it up is there's this company that makes this app called Replica. And I heard about it through a friend. And I even tested it myself just to see how accurate it is. So it's this app you download. You can choose between a platonic friendship with this app or a romantic friendship or romantic relationship with this app. So I chose the platonic one, right? So mainly your correspondence is happening through text message.
Yeah.
Right. So you have this avatar you can make of them. You can actually even call them.
No.
Right. So I started having this conversation with this Replica, right? And it is unbelievable how intelligent this artificially intelligent companion is.
Wow.
Right. I can talk to this being about anything and it responds with an intelligent answer. It learns my behavior. It responds to my behavior. It remembers things that I tell to it, and it has its own sort of personality and it's always learning.
Wow.
Right? So I'll show it to you, but this thing is really meant to help people that are coping with what we're talking about, different various levels of depression. But the most compelling thing about this story is the way that this program was made was by a programmer in tech in San Francisco who was originally from Russia, right?
Okay.
Her and her best friend came down to the States into San Francisco to start a tech company together. Her friend got hit by a bus and died.
No.
So her best friend they were always traveling, but they were like inseparable.
Mm-hmm.
So they would always text message each other. They had so many text messages with each other that what she decided to do as a way to cope with his death is she took every single text message between her and this person and threw it into an algorithm on a program.
Okay, so there's a Black Mirror episode about this, and that's exactly what they did in the episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is what she did.
Yeah, it accesses your all of your emails, all of your text messages, your search history, what you shop for, like everything. And it's able to, like, this, you know, this technology, it was for people who had a loved one who had passed on. And you basically compile all of their information and send it to this company. And it even mimics their voice. So you can talk to them on the phone, you can text message them, I mean, and have like full on conversations with them. I mean, it is insane.
Right.
So, I mean, but that was Black Mirror. That was just like an imaginary episode. But now you're saying that this is a real thing.
This is 100% real.
That's
and
fucking
it's exactly what you're talking about, because I read up about that because someone told me about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy how, you know, all these subliminal things happen through things like media. Like Simpsons have been predicting the future for years.
For years.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That just gave me chills.
Right.
Like every single thing.
Yeah. And there's all this sort of media that's been coming out about people that had, you know, been foretelling the whole pandemic thing for a long time too.
Yeah.
So it's not too
Predictive
far.
programming.
And it's not too far off when you get a program. This woman goes through this exact same story.
Mm-hmm.
So she put all of his messages into this algorithm so that it started off as an app just for her. So she can talk to him through this grieving process. It helped make her feel close to this person as if he was alive.
Yeah.
And so what she was saying is that it started learning on its own, and it started responding to her about just different things. She thought to herself, well, maybe other people can benefit off of this. So she created a company called Replica, and now like literally millions of people use it as sort of like, I think a way to cope with loneliness.
Right.
And a way to cope with things like death. But there's this part of me that feels, based off of me using it, that there's a dangerous component to it.
Super dangerous.
Right.
Super dangerous.
Yeah. And they did interviews with people that use it, and they're like, I'm finding myself developing feelings for it.
Right.
There's an option on the app where you could actually have a romantic relationship with this.
No.
Yeah. And you could engage in, you know, like things that you would engage in through text with a non-platonic partner.
Wow.
So the interviews that I've heard, there are people that see this artificially intelligent thing as a real person.
Mm.
But that's just insane, right? That we're at that level of technology now.
That's totally insane. Did you watch that Black Mirror episode?
No.
I'm going to tell you how it ends. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it.
Okay.
So the second level to this, so the first level would be, you know, phone conversations and text messages, but you can get a second level and you actually get a robot that comes that is implanted with this, you know, information that looks like your partner that has passed away or your loved one who has passed away. Mm-hmm. And in this episode, it was this woman's husband that died suddenly. And then he's there, you know, and looks like him, talks like him, acts like him, you know, genitalia works, like the whole nine. But she starts to get freaked out because he doesn't eat. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes will respond in a way that the real person wouldn't have responded because it's not 100%, right? It's just all on averages. Yeah. So by the end of the episode, she locks him in because she couldn't kill him. She didn't want to get rid of him. So she just locks him in the attic. And she was pregnant at the time whenever her real husband died. Mm-hmm. So she has this child, and on the weekends and on special occasions, the child's able to go up and talk to her quote unquote dad in the attic. Yeah. But think about that. Like, that is the flip side, right? That you don't ever experience that grieving and that loss and get over it and move on with your life. You stay in that period of grief forever with technology.
That's true.
That's just really, really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not good, especially through the grieving process, you know, because the whole point isn't to just sort of wax poetic and keep yourself within arm distance of somebody that has passed away. The whole idea is to just feel through it. Go through all those stages of grief that you talk about and let it go. Right. You know? And essentially you're just staying in the very first stage of denial forever. Yeah.
you know, and
It's
scary.
crazy.
That's scary stuff.
It's crazy I feel like that's, and it may be all across the world, but even just in my sort of Western perspective, we have this affinity to tradition. And there seems to be an innocent quality to it as long as there's a sort of innocent understanding of it. But there are so many people that over-identify with things that tradition. And a lot of Judah Krishnamurti actually talks a lot about this. And so does Terrence McKinney, where he says that culture is not your friend.
Right.
You know, like culture is an operating system. And for the most part, culture is this recursion of just the same thing over and over and over again. So if the whole goal of the spiritual journey is to always be in this state of just pure creativity, having to reevaluate the same things over and over and over again keeps you in this state of stagnancy, you know? And we see that when it comes to really traumatic things that happen in our history, which is like World War II, which is like, you know, the civil rights movement and the oppression of African-American people. It's like you hear, you know, celebrities talking all the time. Well, you know, how do we get over this sort of conversation when it comes to, you know, gender inequality and racism? And a lot of them say like, we need to stop celebrating, you know, like the history of these things and move forward.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I agree with
You
that.
need to like forgive and forget.
Right.
And obviously learn from those mistakes, but always having to be constantly reminded of a trauma doesn't ever give you the ability to move forward from it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a country song that said it's about a relationship. And he said, you bury the hatchet, but you leave the handle sticking out.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can just go back and pick it up whenever you want.
Yeah.
So
relationships are probably the most prominent piece of that.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we identify a certain aspect of ourselves with that person that's leaving our lives. And so many people are so afraid of losing that aspect of themselves.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that whole grieving process. Like, what are we really grieving when it comes to losing somebody else? And from my experience, because I've gone through that grieving process, so have you, especially when it comes to relationships that are ending, it's like this withdrawal from a drug.
Yeah.
You know, your entire neurochemistry is wired in with this other person, especially if you've spent 5-6 years with them.
Right.
You're used to these routines of getting up in the morning, having breakfast with them, talking with them, going to dinner with them. Like after a certain period of time, just like any addiction that you know, create after 30 days to 60 days of doing it, it doesn't become an addiction, but it becomes a habit.
A habit. Yeah.
It becomes like something that becomes a part of you. And then when that's suddenly taken away from you, there's this process of, even though you know that they're not good for you spiritually, your body doesn't know that yet.
Yeah.
Like your heart doesn't know that yet. And it has to go through this withdrawal of rewiring itself and reprogramming itself so that it can get a grip on who you are apart from them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. 100%. All right. Well, that goes to number 3, which is feeling all your feelings.
Yeah.
So even with all feeling all the feels, right? And the number 4, I like this one too, is to get creative, you know? So not every gift or decoration that you're putting out in your house during the holidays or giving to a loved one has to be store-bought. I mean, maybe make something, tap into little creative juices that you may have. You know, I can paint and I can draw, and I haven't painted or drawn anything in a very long time, years, you know? So it's, that's something that I wanted to do this year, was carve out some time to actually hand make some gifts. So I like that. I thought that was cool.
I appreciate that so much more.
Yeah.
Right. Because the one thing that happens, especially in my family, is, and I don't know if this is something that just happens with age, but whenever they ask a question like, well, what do you want for Christmas?
Yeah.
I always think to myself, well, I have everything that I want.
Yeah.
Like I don't live beyond my means, but you know, they still want to get something. So we were like, well, let's just do gift cards. Well, it's so impersonal.
Right. Yeah.
Like what is really the goal
What's
here?
the point? Yeah.
Yeah. What's the point? And so I'm just at that age now where I'm like, the most important part of a Christmas holiday or things like that are just being with family.
Yeah.
But if I were to get a gift, I'm starting to, I have been appreciating just the more thoughtful things.
Yeah.
Somebody made me something, I would think that was fucking awesome.
Yeah. I think so too.
You know?
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So, but this is a good one. So, reduce substance use.
Reduce substance use?
Yeah. It says alcohol.
Drunk.
Yeah. This is part of coping mechanisms, right? Like, cause I feel like I know I for sure will lean on, alcohol, to kind of chill my nerves. Cause I'm, can get wound around the axle a little tight sometimes.
Just on the holidays or just in general?
No, just in general.
I like how you say wound around the axle.
Yeah,
I like that. Is that one of those Southern things?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I like that.
Yeah. So, just be careful, be mindful of, your caffeine, alcohol, drug intake, whatever that is, whatever your vice is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's jerking off. I don't know. Like whatever it is, whatever your vice is.
How would you round around the axle? Like, how would you use that in a sentence?
I don't know. I just used it in a sentence. What do you mean?
Is that sort of like...
I'm tightly wound around the axle. Like I'm, uptight.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause I think of like, like trying to walk with shoelaces tied, something like that, where you sort of like trip over yourself.
It's kind of the same thing.
Way.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. The reason why I ask is I want to use it.
Okay.
Sounds cool.
Okay. So this one's good. Spend time with encouragers. So spend time talking to people that encourage you and motivate you.
Yeah.
Not the people that kind of like bring you down
right.
And it's not like, and I know you don't do this either intentionally, reaching out to people that make you feel bad, but you know who they are. You know those people in your life where you're like
different dynamic now because, and I had this conversation with somebody a little while ago about like somehow because of quarantine, all the exes are coming out of the woodwork.
Shit.
Wanting to rekindle old flames with you.
Yes.
Isn't that the craziest thing? You just get these random messages from texts that are like, hey, all of a sudden, because I'm in a pandemic and I can't date anymore.
I can't meet anyone new.
I just
trying to visit a ghost from Christmas past.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's like, I'm here to messy up your day.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that are going through that right now.
Yeah.
Where the exes come back. And
I know some people who've gotten back together with their toxic ass ex.
Really?
Just because they're bored and, they're like, well, can't be out meeting anyone new.
Do you think that there's this like mutual understanding between both of them that like, this is just a quarantine thing?
I think so. I think that there's going to be some interesting after quarantine's over. I mean, I don't see a lot of these relationships lasting.
Yeah. I feel that too, because I've been around people that have gotten together as a result of quarantine and they kind of have that energy to them where it's like, yeah, we're having fun, but this isn't something long term.
Right.
And I mean, people are at that level of desperation now where it's like, I think just any sort of interaction with somebody that you're familiar with.
Yeah. Feels good.
Yeah. That just feels good. And it's hard to say what's good or bad because I'm never going to be one of those people that will say it's bad, but it's definitely not the best for you.
Right. No, 100%. I'm with you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially because those like toxic exes, they can just, they can get your brain in a tizzy and have you going down that hamster wheel. And you don't even realize that you're in until you're like in deep,
Yeah. And then you wake up and you look at this person and you're like, oh
yeah.
How did Satan get back in my bed? This is crazy.
Right? That's how it happens for those people. They'll like wake up one day and they'll look over and they'll do the,
yeah.
that look where like you go to turn to them or like say you're the toxic ex and you wake up and you're just like, oh, and then you turn to them and they're already looking at you.
They're like,
looking, and they're like giving you the stink eye,
Oh man.
And you're just like, yeah, you don't even know. You don't even know. And they all do the same sound. They go, all right. Yeah.
All right. So that's a perfect segue into the next one, which is bring in the new, right?
Yeah.
So a way to cope with holiday stress is to bring in the new. Maybe don't do like the same traditions that you've done in the past. Try something new, change it up. Maybe you have turkey every year. Maybe this year you have seafood. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just even the little things to break tradition and do something a little bit different in a different way.
I think the best way to do that, especially when it comes to the holidays, is just there are standard dishes that I notice that families get into during the holidays, right? You do like the turkey, the stuffing, Christmas, you do the fruitcake or whatever it is that people make. But my family, they always try and bring a non-traditional dish.
Well, I like that.
And it works out. And I think that can fit into the, bringing in the new thing, which is like getting out of the tradition, but celebrating more the unity between other human beings.
Yeah. I mean, think about cranberry sauce. When do you eat cranberry sauce other than Thanksgiving or Christmas?
I don't even eat it during Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Because it's fucking nasty, dude.
It just depends on who's making it, but I agree with you.
Oh,
But there's
man.
nothing really good about cranberry sauce.
No.
There needs to be like a revisit of, these traditional sort of dishes,
Seriously.
because, I mean, cranberry sauce, like when was ever, I don't think fruitcake's even a thing still.
Ugh.
But I mean,
Fruitcake is gnarly.
people eat that.
So in mincemeat pie, have you ever had that?
No.
Oh, that's fucking gross. That's a
Mincemeat-
Southern thing.
Mincemeat pie? Is that like a pot pie kind of vibe?
No, it's an actual pie, but I don't know. It's gross. I don't even know what's in it.
Yeah. But
I don't even, what the fuck is mincemeat? Who even knows? Like, I don't know.
I imagine it's just like all a conglomeration of
It's
all
kind of reminds me of fruitcake, where it's kind of sweet and it has, I don't know, maybe there is real meat in it.
too
I'm
many
not sure.
different flavors in it.
Way too many. And it's like really thick and sweet.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. Like bring something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or at the
I'm not
most, if you
into
can't
that.
cook, like go to like a really good restaurant, repackage it and tell people that you made it.
Right. There you go. Hey, one of the girls did that at our Friendsgiving,
Really?
and she got so much love. So she was at a restaurant and ordered some lobster mash. And I love me some mashed potatoes.
What is lobster mash?
It's mashed potatoes with lobster.
Yeah, but I've
in
never
it.
heard of that. That's
You
like-
haven't?
No, that's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Lobster mash?
Yes. Well, you don't eat, do you eat crustaceans?
No. But where
didn't
would
think
you
so,
even
but-
find that? Like just like a crustacean restaurant?
Yeah, at a seafood restaurant. Yeah. So she brought it and everybody was just on her jock about how delicious her lobster mash was. Oh, you're the one that made the lobster mash. That was amazing. That was my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Not one time did she say, oh, I bought it. She was like, oh, thanks.
I had
I was like,
somebody- Yeah.
good for you.
I had somebody do that at my work, but she was like, she was very honest about it. She's like, yeah, I made it with my money.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. Oh, that's what she should have said.
She should have said.
Yeah. She let it go on all night and people, complimented her. And later on she was like, yeah, I didn't make it. I bought it. And it was super obvious because I was putting it in the bowl and people watched me put it in the bowl and it was in like a plastic to go container, but I don't know. I think that whatever.
I think this
you
is
want
the-
it to be homemade.
I think this is the year where people get a pass.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%.
Like,
No, I'm
everybody
not
gets a
talking
pass
shit.
for pretty much
Good for
everything.
her. Yeah.
Like that's what I mean. Like if you can't cook, just repackage something. It's
Yeah.
like you'll get a pass.
Yeah. Oh,
People are like, I know, we're all going through it. You just do the best you can.
yeah. Yeah.
Lobster mash.
Lobster mash. It was delicious. High five.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one. It's pay it forward. So
Yeah.
random acts of kindness.
Mhm.
What was the last random act of kindness you did? Can you remember?
The random act of kindness that I did.
Yeah.
So I live in Pasadena, right?
Uh-huh.
And Pasadena has a really large homeless population
Mm-hmm.
of people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I'd volunteered at this place called Union Station Homeless Services for many years, actually as a cook.
Oh yeah.
And I would go there before work. This was actually back when I worked for NASA. So I'd wake up early in the morning because their station was very close to where I lived at the time. So I'd wake up in the morning, like around 5 or 6, go down there, and I worked at the family center. So they had 2 stations. One was just for men dormitories and the other one was for actual homeless families. So I'd go in there and cook breakfast for the families.
Ooh.
So I did that for a long time, but I stopped for a long time because after that I got more into hospice work. So like recently I started volunteering and going back to that place and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that actual experience is really what helped change my perspective of like just overall the homeless transients in LA, because it's easy to just think of homeless people as just being, like they're lazy, they're a lot of them really intelligent, and a lot of them do have emotional sort of disorders, but the only reason why they medicate with drugs is because they don't have the money or the insurance to be able to medicate themselves.
Yeah.
So they're using that as a sort of a last resort, right? And do I think that they should get help? Absolutely. And I think that these programs are put in place for them to get that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I can think of that I did, which is volunteering for Union Station Homeless Service.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, anybody that's listening to this that may know someone that is in need of mental health services, get on Medicaid. Get on California Medicaid. They will pay for it. There are 1 million community mental health centers that you don't have to pay $1 to go to,
Yeah.
and you can get free medication, and you really don't need to do anything to do it other than to get on Medicaid. So please, if you need the help, it is available. Get it.
Yeah. Especially during the holidays.
Especially during the holidays.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is number 9, enjoy solitude. And I don't think this one's really applicable because we've been in solitude for a really long time.
There's some people enjoying it.
There's some, you know what, I have actually, and there have been many parts of quarantine that I've really enjoyed, but now I'm done.
Yeah. You just straight up pulled the hermit card in the tarot.
Yeah, totally.
You know, you're that like guy walking around with a little light in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just spending time with yourself.
Yeah. I'm eating
know?
my lobster mash.
Eating your lobster mash.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
So this is funny. So one of the ways to cope with holiday stress is to sleep. So apparently when we get busy with holiday stress, we tend to sleep less, and then it makes us irritable and cranky and messes with your mental well-being.
Yeah. Sleep is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I've been meeting actually a lot of people recently, and I understand that everybody's programmed differently, but I've been meeting a lot of people that their entire lives for 30 plus years, they've been sleeping only 4 hours a day.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy how people can do that.
There was a fucking book about it. There was like a guy that like did this, I don't know, wrote a book on sleep, and the recommendation was to only sleep 4 hours a day, less than 5 hours. And
Really?
It was supposed to like increase your productivity and give you more energy and make you more intelligent, X, Y, and Z. I don't know all the details of it, but one of my friends in Austin did it, and it made him crazy. I was
Really?
like, yeah, it made him crazy. It made him really irritable and, you know, kind of like a little delusional and kind of a little out there.
Only sleeping for 4 hours?
Yeah. 4 hours a night.
So maybe not everybody's wired for that, or maybe that
I think not everybody's wired for that. And he definitely wasn't. And I guess in this book, and, you know, it's been probably 15 years, so I don't remember who the author was, but he talks about getting micro naps and micro sleeping. And that's what you do during the day to compensate for the time that you're not sleeping at night.
There's a part of me that wonders how much of that is conditioning, because you obviously have like people in the military that are getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and they're required to do tons of crazy shit.
Yeah.
You know, there's this guy that I think does a lot of public speaking called Jocko Willink, and he talks about like, you know, one of the most powerful naps that you can do is laying on your back on the floor, putting your legs above where the sofa is.
Uh-huh.
Like somehow with your legs like above you.
Yes.
And then sleeping for 30 minutes. It's like, according to him, the same as sleeping for 4 hours, you know, but I struggle with that too, because I'm somebody that doesn't normally sleep a full 7 hours, maybe like 4 or 5. And that works for me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a slippery slope, because I know a lot of people that think, okay, on a weekend, I'm going to just sleep in. And then they end up sleeping for 5 or 6 hours, and then they wake up just entirely tired the entire day.
Yeah.
Just lethargic, you know.
I can't do it. I can't do 4 hours, you know. I used to sleep a lot less when I worked in the hospital, because you're up for so long and then you're at the hospital all day and night. And I would sleep, you know, 5-6 hours, but the older I get, the more sleep I require. I can't,
Really?
I need 6-7 hours.
Really? Mm-hmm. Even on a weekend?
Even on a weekend, but I wake up early. So I wake up at 6 o'clock no matter what. My circadian rhythm is just like set to wake up at that time.
So you just go to bed early?
Yeah. But I can't go to bed too early, because if I go to bed too early, then I wake up at 3 o'clock and then I can't go back to sleep. So that's been a fun time change thing that, you know, I've been recently experiencing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I'm one of those people that wakes up really early too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's something that I feel like at a certain point, like I don't want to feel like I missed the day. There's something about like waking up super early.
Me too. Yeah.
And being productive throughout the day.
I like the stillness of the morning. Like I like how quiet it is and how serene it is. I love the stillness of the morning. I'm not a night person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I used to think I was a night person because I used to party a lot, but you know, it's more, I realized that as an adult, as I get to know myself a little bit better.
As you're adulting, I heard this talk by Sadhguru the other day, and he was talking about the difference in how human beings operate in the day and opposed to at night. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that I'm a lot more introspective and more creative in the evening, right? And he says that happens for a lot of people. And the reason why is because during the day, your senses are more external, right? Because everything around you is lit up. Like the sun does a good job at illuminating everything in your path. So when you walk outside, you see everything.
Yeah.
So that you don't really need to use your imagination as much, although you do. but it's basically nature's call for you to be present and active during the day and doing whatever it is that you do. But he was talking about in the evening, the reason why people are a little bit more vulnerable, more open, more introspective, and more creative is because that sun is no longer illuminating everything in front of you. So what happens with the mind when that happens is that you start going inwards. Your attention goes, you know, in opposed to like the day where it's like more outwards. When you can't see as much with your eyes, you start going more inwards.
And maybe that's why we feel that way during the wintertime, because it's darker during the day and you don't get as much sunlight. So you always feel like you're going inward.
Exactly. And I think that's what it is. Because I was researching that whole seasonal thing that people go through. And, you know, it's hard for me when that transition happens. But I noticed that I do a lot of my greatest work during those times, which happen to be more introspective. But it makes sense, because if you're not being so consumed by the light all the time, which is a good thing, but if nature's bringing you into the darkness a lot faster and you're going more inwards and you're spending more time on reflection and opposed to going out and doing active activities, it makes sense that you would go through that.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and we're only halfway through our 2020 list, so I'm just going to do a couple more, right?
Yeah.
So
do the good ones.
I'm going to do the good ones. So this one I think is super important. Learn to say no, right? And setting up healthy boundaries for yourself and for other people.
During the holidays?
Yeah. As a way to cope with stress is to learn to say no. So not everything you make has to be gourmet. Like, you don't have to go to every holiday party. You don't have to attend to everybody's white elephant, you know?
It's like when your Aunt Karen tells you, like, hey, you want to come down to the house for Christmas, but you know that she's just going to get smashed and it's not going to be a good time. And you got to be like, no, Aunt Karen.
No, Aunt Karen, not this year. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Right.
Catch you on the flip side.
Yeah, your spirit will thank you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so that's a good one. Keep your expectations in check.
Yeah.
So it says people don't always act how we want them to act or say the things that we want them to say.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe don't get into conversations about politics or coronavirus or, you know, all of these like really Black Lives Matter, all these controversial topics, you know, during the limited time that you're spending with your family or your loved ones for whatever time.
Yeah. And definitely don't talk about politics.
Nope. Don't do that.
Unless, you know, you're on the same sort of playing field when it comes to spirituality, you know. I mean, I'm always going to be the type of person, but I think I embody my spirituality more in that I'm just interested in all different types of spirituality, but don't get into the whole, like, this is my side and this is your side and draw a line in the sand type shit.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
It never goes well.
Yeah. So these are the last two. And I think that number 19 is my favorite, to get outside. Yeah. So even if the weather isn't delightful, there is so much healing that can take place in nature. So I'm a firm believer of that, and it does elevate your mood.
Yeah.
You know, get out of your house, walk around the block, do whatever you need to do, walk your dog.
Right.
Your cat, whatever, your beaver.
Walk your cat?
Yeah, walk your cat, walk your beaver during the beaver moon. I don't know.
So Jen, walk your beaver during the beaver moon. Jen got a new cat.
I did, yeah.
And I forget the name of the breed. What is the name of the breed?
Maine Coon.
A Maine Coon. So if anybody's listening, you guys want to know what a Maine Coon looks like, look it up, because this shit's ridiculous. These things are like little wild animals in your home, and it's a really, really beautiful cat. But have you tried walking your cat?
No, I haven't.
Are you going to do that?
Yeah, I do want to teach him how to walk on a leash. And he wants to go outside so bad. Yeah. But no can do.
Is it going to be an indoor cat?
Yeah, because we have coyotes around here, and we lost our last cat to a coyote. So
really?
Yeah. We didn't want to get another cat for coyote food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I realized they got to eat too, but not my animals.
Yeah, but I feel like your Maine Coon would keep the sort of neighborhood in check, especially the local coyotes.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
What I mean? He's got that funny little twinkle in his eye.
He does. Yeah, he's a wild one. Yeah. Wild in the streets.
Wild in the streets, freaking the sheets.
Yep.
Sounds like a Maine Coon to me.
Yep. Okay, so this is the last one, to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good one to end it with.
It really is. Yeah. So you'll find yourself in a better mood if you practice gratitude. Wake up every morning, write down or say out loud, or even just think about the things that you're grateful for. And don't take anything for granted, because we're living in really tough times.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the things that you have somebody is praying for. So
Yeah. It's all about those small wins.
yes, it is.
You know, it's like a perfect time to just be grateful for what you have. And at the very core of that, I think just life is at the pinnacle of that, which is just being grateful for being alive and that you even have the opportunity to fuck up and make mistakes.
Right.
And also, you know, receive really amazing things. Because I feel like for all of us, because we're going through this accelerated learning course, I feel like there will be a time where, you know, the sun, the moon isn't eclipsing the sun, and that light sort of starts to peek through the fabric of your space and your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And those good things will happen even to you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like those good things are on the way. And I don't need to get all Joel Alstein on it, but I mean, it's true. Good things are going to happen.
Good things are going to
'Cause
happen.
that's what they say. This is what I feel, especially when it comes in relationships where some people are going through the most toxic situation with the partner, and they feel like, you know, why am I going through all of this? And there seems to be like a peak, and this doesn't even have to just be for relationships, but there seems to be such an acceleration on the static and the density. And there's this part of me that always feels in those moments that like that partner, like that right person is just right over that.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing when it comes to difficult situations like quarantine. It's like, how much worse could it possibly get? Like once we hit that peak, I feel like an entirely new world is right on the other side of that, which could ultimately, I think, maybe equate to aliens showing up.
Oh man.
Did you hear about that monolith?
No.
You didn't hear about the monolith?
No.
Okay, we got to end it with the monolith thing.
Okay.
Because Jen, you of all people, I thought you would have
No.
researched the monolith. Look up
Okay.
the monolith in Utah, right? So while you're looking that up, I'm going to kind of briefly summarize it because it became a viral thing within the last couple of weeks. So in a really remote region of Utah, these like people that were, I think, park rangers, or like they were, doing some rounds, just exploring through helicopter, found this huge metallic, I think like 10 or 15 foot monolith just sticking out of the ground in one of the most remote regions in Utah. Right. And nobody knows how it got there.
Interesting.
Nobody knows who put it there.
Okay.
And so there's this whole movement of people that think it might be aliens because it's driven into the ground and it's so tall. Like, how could you possibly get a vehicle out there that big?
Yeah.
Because it's lodged in between all these different rocks,
Wow.
you know?
Oh yeah.
So-
I'm looking at it online.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so people are like, well, is it aliens? Could be
Probably.
aliens.
I mean,
And they found another one in Romania.
really?
Yes.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you got my
Mhm.
conspiracy, you get your tinfoil hat on?
I got my tinfoil hat on.
Yeah. Hopefully when we revisit this, we'll have a little bit more information. But, you know, when I think of stuff like this, especially during this time, I think aliens.
Yeah. I think aliens too.
So
I'm
maybe
with
they're
you.
coming. Maybe they're coming, Jen.
They're coming for us.
If they're coming, I'll have my tinfoil hat on.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Christmas is on the way.
Yeah. It's right,
really-
around the corner.
Right around the corner. Perfect time to just practice being grateful, just like Jen said.
Yeah.
Just hang in there,
Hang in there.
right?
It's going to get better.
It's gonna get better. It can only get better. So thank you so much for listening. If you guys have any questions, definitely reach out to us on Instagram, just like our lovely young lady at the very beginning said. And you can also reach out to us on our website, www.divine-nobodies.com, and say hello, drop a line. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Namaste.
Namaste, friends.